Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
Hi, this is Haytham Elhawary of KINETIC, and you're listening to the New Warehouse podcast. Today's safety tip is warming up. We're getting into the cold season, and warming up your muscles before you start a day's work is just a recipe to keep you safe.
Fulfillment demand continues to skyrocket and outpace available labor. To keep up, warehouse operators are turning to flexible fulfillment solutions like 6 River Systems. Utilizing 6 River Systems' award-winning combination of collaborative robots, artificial intelligence, and operational expertise will make your associates and wall-to-wall fulfillment workflow more efficient. No new infrastructure, no change to warehouse layout, easy to deploy and scale, easy to train and retain associates, all at half the cost of traditional automation. Want to take your fulfillment operation to the next level? Go to www.6river.com to learn more. That's www.6river.com to learn more. How do you create warehouse superheroes? The answer is simple. With visual voice scan solutions from ProCensus. With record demand and labor shortages, warehouses need more effective workers and lightning-fast onboarding. Visual voice scan solutions from ProCensus enable warehouse workers to achieve superhero performance with up to 20% improved productivity and up to 99% accuracy. Hands-free barcode scanners from ProGlove paired with wearable mobile computers is just the beginning. Improved mobile interfaces with reduced keystrokes, easy-to-read screens, custom keyboards, voice-enabled interface, and more can be realized with ease on the leading WMS platforms. Sound too good to be true? Let us show you with our one-of-a-kind virtual demo. Visit ProCensus.com to get started today. Again, that's ProCensus.com to get started.
The New Warehouse podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse podcast, bringing you a new episode today. In today's episode, I am going to be joined by Haytham Elhawary, who is the CEO and co-founder at KINETIC. And KINETIC we have had on the show previously. They do a wearable device that help your workers make sure that they are doing the right ergonomic moves and alerting them when they are not. But they've taken their company to the next level in doing so and utilizing that safety aspect and that safety data to really come up with a new approach to workers' comp insurance, which is very interesting, I think. So we're going to learn more about that today. We're also going to hear a little bit about the KINETIC story because Haytham is the co-founder of the company. So it's a very interesting story. So we're going to welcome Haytham to the show. Haytham, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Kevin. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah, definitely. Happy to have you on. You know, I think the KINETIC platform and, the device and everything that you guys were doing before is a really great thing. But now to bring this insurance component into it is incredibly interesting too. So I'm really excited to learn about it. But before we dive into that, for people that maybe didn't hear the previous episode about KINETIC, want to get familiar with KINETIC, why don't you give us kind of a brief overview? What is KINETIC? What is it that you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you said it pretty well. So before I sort of tell you what KINETIC does, I want to give you a little bit of the backstory of sort of how I founded the company with my co-founder back in 2014. So really what, the way this started is I grew up in England. My mother was a nurse there and she got injured a lot. And she got injured because she's moving heavy patients, because there's a lot of equipment to move around. And she didn't get very much training about how to use her body to move these things around, right? So she'll get injured a lot, and a lot of things happen when you get hurt, right? One is you can't live your regular personal life, right? So spending time with the family, doing your hobbies, all that gets really affected, obviously, but also your ability to provide, right? And so for me, what's stuck in the back of my head is when my mom got injured, other than sort of the suffering that we would see, is just like how much it actually affects your life, right? Yeah. So So I didn't act on it immediately, but I had that in the back of my head as something that, I'd lived up close. And so it wasn't until I met my co-founder, who's like he's a wearables, I guess nerd is the right word. So he used to work at IBM. Yeah. He's an electrical engineer, really smart, worked on these big mainframe computers, but he liked running and reading at the same time. So he would run on a treadmill and try to read. And I don't know if you've ever tried that, but it's really hard to do.
I could not do that. No way.
So being the nerd that he is, what he did is he got like a sweatband and he put a sensor on it, and he was able to track the movements of his head and use that to move the text on the tablet while he was running, and so he could run and read at the same time.
Wow!
And so I was like pretty impressed.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. And so really when I saw that, I was like, hey, I don't know if there's a business in helping people to run and read, but if we could apply this to helping people move their bodies in a better way and prevent these injuries, that we'll probably be onto something. And so that's what we did. We in 2014 I got married, and I remember coming back from my honeymoon, quitting my job, and then he quit his job, and then we just started working on this.
Wow.
And that's really how we started. And sort of to summarize what KINETIC is, it's sort of really the story I told. It's most injuries that happen in the workplace are preventable. And so what we came up with is a wearable technology that could help prevent injuries, mostly the injuries that happen from ergonomics, right? From the way you use your body. And the way that is, this is a warehouse podcast. So if you're in a warehouse, you're moving material around,
all the time.
There's a lot of emphasis on productivity. Right? You've got to be fast, you've got to be effective. And so what ends up happening is there's a lot of pressure to produce and move and move things around. But the training about how to do that in a way to avoid injuries usually it is either little or hardly any, right? And so what you end up is folks who have a lot of pressure to produce and have output, but don't really know how to use their body in the best way to avoid injuries, right? And I always think of this as like it's almost like someone's asking you to compete as an athlete, right? To perform as an athlete, but without telling you how, right? And so you do the best you can, but inevitably when you look at the injury rates that happen for these type of workers in warehouses, it's through the roof.
Oh yeah.
And actually, it was funny. I was reading that nursing is, together with roofing, the two most dangerous professions in terms of like injuries that happen. Yeah. So anyway, so we feel that like we could prevent most of those injuries, and so what we came up with is with a device, and I'm actually wearing it now. So it looks almost like a pager that goes on your belt.
Cool.
And it helps you. It's almost like a real-time coach. It vibrates whenever you do a movement that could put you at risk of injury, and it sort of helps people stay attuned of how they're moving and readapt when they see that they're putting themselves at risk. So that's really been the product that we've developed. And honestly, it's been great. We have like very, very large companies using it right now. So Pepsi is our biggest client. Iron Mountain is another big client. Yeah. So we literally have thousands of workers right now who are wearing this day in and day out, and they're improving the way they move. And we've been pretty effective at reducing injuries. So, we had a sort of third party do a study on our data, and we've reduced injuries anywhere between sort of 50 and 60%. Wow. Strain and sprain injuries, right? Specifically the injuries of ergonomics. So, when used, it's pretty effective. It's a pretty effective device.
Very interesting story. And I mean, I remember the story from the previous episode too, but I mean, hearing it from you is really, really incredible. And I love that, your mother inspired it and you really took it on and pursued it. I mean, it's a very noble thing. And, I think the idea behind it is so incredible, because it is something, like you mentioned, that, people are kind of, in a sense, not really conscious of in their daily aspect. And you mentioned, even in the working environment, like you're pushing yourself because you want to hit the productivity, because you're thinking about, making sure your performance, keeping your job, doing the things that you need to do in order to do the things you need to do to support your life, right? But you had a kind of an interesting point there in the beginning about, even though you're working like to support your life, but then you get hurt. Now you see how, things in your life kind of take a hit, basically, and you're not able to support yourself, support family. You can't do the things that you kind of work to enjoy, right? So it's really important that we're keeping mindful of that, and the device is really helping to do that. So I think it's an incredibly smart thing, and it's so simple as well. I mean, not simple in terms of the technology behind it, but just a simple little pager device, kind of like you said. And again, a 50 to 60%, I mean, reduction in safety incidents is pretty remarkable. I mean, that's pretty huge. So I'm curious, on that front there, in terms of metrics, like, since introducing this into some companies, like, you mentioned Pepsi, Iron Mountain, I mean, how quickly do you see like a change in the safety incidents, and I think, also like kind of the employees' actions and their reaction to it?
Yeah. So it goes a little bit in phases, right? So when we deploy the technology, what tends to happen is workers start wearing it, and the device is counting how many times it goes off, right? So it's like, hey, at the beginning, you're doing 150 high-risk movements. And, I say 150 because that's about average when people start. But we've had folks like doing thousands a day, just so you get an idea also of just the intensity of the work, right? So, say you start off with 150, the device is giving you this feedback. So the first phase of the impact that the device has is mostly around helping reduce these unsafe movements, right? So you start off 150, then it's 140, and then you start to see yourself go down. And the device is pretty good in the sense that it gives you goals that are like, in accordance with how well you're doing. Yeah. And also gives you a bit of a rank, so you start competing with other folks. Okay. So we're trying to make it fun. Yeah. And so the first phase you see is typically that after, a few months, the number of these high-risk postures or high-risk movements goes down pretty dramatically. So you start off 150, you might be at 60, 50, 40. So you're starting to see much lower numbers than where you started. And that's, like, we know that if that happens, like, the injury reduction comes, right? And so it usually takes about 3 months before you can start to see some of the injuries go down. And then really quarter over quarter, you can start to see. So by the end of the year, you're looking at, 30, 40, 50% reduction in injury rates. But it does take a little while. And, if you think about it, Kevin, like, it's very much about training into a new habit, right? Because you sort of mentioned how conscious, like, I always compare it to like when you brush your teeth. If someone asks you, how do you brush your teeth? You're like, well, I don't know. I just brush it, right? It's a complete habit that you don't think about. and the way people lift and move is a complete habit. Like if you pick something up and I asked you afterwards, hey, like, how did you do that? You'd be hard pressed to tell me exactly what you did with your body to do it. So the first phase is this like awareness, and then it's this retraining. And the reason it's effective is because, with a lot of regular training, you're getting a one-off lecture or one-off demonstration, and that helps you think about it for a couple of days, but it's not enough to change a habit. Whereas if you want to change a habit, you've got to have this sort of continuous feedback until that habit becomes, and until you almost become unaware that you've adopted a new habit, right? Yeah. And so that's really the process that the device does. It goes through this sort of awareness, changing a habit, injury reduction. And then you ask something which is really important, which is what are the reactions that workers have to the device? And honestly, Kevin, like, this is the crux of everything. So we know that if people wear the device, it works, right? So the question always becomes like, how can we get the maximum number of people to wear it? And there's a few things that we've had some sort of success with this, right? So first of all, if you deploy a product like this, you have to spend the time to really explain to people like what it does and what it doesn't do. Okay. You can't just be like, hey guys, I got a new device, wear it. And because people will suspect the worst if you do that.
Oh yeah. Right? Like you're tracking me, or you're watching my every move. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's Big Brother. It's like, what are you going to fire me over this? Yeah. Is it tracking my break time? We get a lot of that at the beginning. So we really put an emphasis on like, okay, look, this is just a safety device. This is what it's going to do. It doesn't have a GPS. It doesn't have a camera. Doesn't have a microphone. Yeah. We ask managers, be explicit. Like, you're not going to get disciplined, even if you have super high numbers on here. Yeah. It's really just a safety tool, right? So you have to go through that process. You have to allow people time to ask their questions, to get familiar with it. And I think if you do that well up front, you get a lot more. People tend to think, okay, like, people, they're looking out for me. Yeah. This is it's an interesting thing. They wear it for a few days. They understand what it does. And then, the big thing that happens is when they start to feel better, like, hey, at the end of the day, I feel a little less sore, or, I come home and a little less fatigued. that's when you get that tipping point of people wearing it, people encouraging others. Yeah. And so that's a big part of it. The other part is, making it into a sort of fun game. And that really came later. But, what we realize is, if you think of like Fitbit or Apple Watch, right, they give you like 10,000 steps a day.
Oh, yeah. And
just the fact that they give you that goal makes you more likely to hit it, right?
Yeah.
Than if they told
go
you.
Walk around the block like one more time just to hit it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. If they just told you walk as much as you can, it would have much less of an impact. So we started working with goals. And then, competition is always like with my dad on my Fitbit, like I have him and he has me. And so if he's more steps than me by dinner time, I'm going to go for a walk, right? Because I'm not going to let him beat me. So competition is really, really motivating. Yeah. So we can see that, when people pick up the device, it tells them you're ranked like 3rd out of 7 in your area. And I can tell you the next question is who's number 1, who's number 2, right? They start asking you around who is it? Yeah. So that has helped a lot as well of just getting people motivated and excited about the data. So, but with all that said, I would say that we never get 100% adoption. Right? Yeah. I wish we could. I'd say a good facility, a good warehouse will have about 85 to 90%. And then there'll be 10% PTO, people who think this is going to go to the federal government or something. Like there's always like 10% of people that just will not wear it. Yeah. And that's just the way it is.
Very interesting. And, I love to hear the kind of the adoption story though, because I think, anytime you bring technology in to, especially in a warehouse setting, at least that's, where my experience is, people are always a little skeptical, like, oh, what is it going to do for me? And, what's the deal? So, but it's really interesting. I mean, that it is strictly just a safety tool. I mean, I think that's really important for it to be successful in a facility and operation and be able to have that widespread adoption. And I'm curious, have you heard any feedback, at least when people start using it, that the employees notice that they are potentially feeling better, or maybe not, feeling like they have soreness, typical soreness that they would see, from day to day? I mean, do they find themselves like feeling more normal and more comfortable, I guess?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah, so absolutely. And so those are big wins, right? For us personally, because that's why we got into this, right? Like we wanted to have that type of impact. And so when you hear like, hey, I can go home and lift my kids, like I feel a lot less fatigued, I can sleep better. Yeah. Like that's it reminds you why we're doing this. Yeah. But I will say, like, managers have been very good at taking the workers that have those, like that are very vocal about that type of thing, and using them as a way to encourage the rest of the workers so we found it very effective, where like someone who's become an advocate because they feel better, they take less payment or whatever it is, right? Their back aches less. If your colleague is telling you, hey, I started wearing this a few months ago and these are the benefits, like people's skepticism will become more overcome, right? Like they'll be more willing to give it a try. And so we found that like that is our most effective way of deploying this, is when a worker who's felt the benefit is like literally telling folks, wear this because you're just going to feel so much better.
Yeah. Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, I was curious about that. So I mean, the device itself is the first phase of the company, right? So it's very I think a really critical thing that you guys launched, and it's certainly something I think I've never seen anything else like it or similar. I mean, I think it's pretty interesting and very focused on safety. But this year, recently, you guys kind of taking the next step in the company, which is a pretty interesting move. I mean, it makes sense totally when you think about it, but you recently launched an insurance side of the company for KINETIC. So tell us a little bit about that and how that kind of came about.
Yeah, absolutely. So we always joke that, it's every kid's dream to sell insurance, right? So that's that's what got so actually, I never imagined myself getting into insurance, but the way this worked out was actually pretty interesting. So until now, when I tell you like Pepsi or Frito-Lay or Iron Mountain, they're our clients, like those are large organizations that tend to be self-insured. So what that ultimately means is that they pay for the injuries themselves. So when you come and sell a product like ours, it makes sense to them because you're saving them. Ultimately, if the injury rates go down, you're saving them money. Their workers are working more. It's all good stuff. So that sale is relatively easy because it makes a lot of business sense. When you get to smaller companies who have insurance, the reaction was usually, well, this is great, it's interesting, but I have insurance, right? So either you get the insurance to like subsidize this or to give me a discount or something, but otherwise, they don't feel the financial pain as much. They feel the operational pain, right? Their workers getting hurt, like people are having to work overtime, but they don't feel as much of the financial pain. So it was always a harder thing for us to sell into companies that had insurance. So really what we realized they were telling us is that you're selling me the wrong product. Like that's really like what you should be doing. What we should be doing is selling me the insurance and provide your device for free, because then, you're essentially betting on your own device, right? And I would say that this idea of insurance really came around when we started to have about 4 years worth of data of the impact that the devices had, right? Of like this 50 to 60% injury reduction. So if that's the case, right, you can literally give the product for free. They buy the insurance of us. I'll give you the product for free, and your claims are going to go down so much that it's going to be a profitable insurance policy, right? So that's really how we thought about it. And so that's really what we did. We decided, okay, let's offer insurance. Yeah. And I can tell you, Kevin, like I didn't know anything about insurance other than like people play a lot of golf. So then the question became like, all right, well, how do you sell insurance? I mean, like, I don't know how does this even work? And it turns out that there is a really, not a simple way, but I would say a good way to start, which is you partner with an insurance company and they let you offer insurance on their behalf. Okay. Right. So it's a very easy way to start. You also, like, we're selling the insurance, KINETIC Insurance, but the insurance is actually provided by another company. And so we did that. Nationwide actually was an investment in us very early on. So they've been a big believer in the technology. And so when we told them, hey, we want to start offering insurance, do you want to provide the insurance and let us sell it on your behalf? And, we started down a road which ultimately led to that happening, right? And so about 3 weeks ago, we started being able to offer insurance. And I tell you, Kevin, the conversations have changed dramatically, right? Because now we go to a potential client and be like, hey, look, you have to buy workers' comp because it's mandatory. Yeah. You could buy your insurance from any of these 200 carriers that are out there, insurance companies out there, but they could offer you exactly the same, right? Yeah. So why don't you give us a try, take our product, and see if it has an impact on your claims, and see if that means, next year you'll have a cheaper policy and things of that nature. So people's ears prick up, right? Like, who doesn't want like free safety tech, especially if they care about safety, which is often the case. Who doesn't want like, a cool piece of new technology that's going to help you reduce claims. It's going to keep your workers working every day. And also like contributes a lot to the safety culture, right? Because I think when workers see that they're getting taken care of, they tend to want to stay more. They tend to like be more engaged. So we started offering insurance, and we just started. So it's very early days, and we're trying to figure out how this is going to go. But the reception has been very good. And, a lot of companies are very interested. And I think really it comes down to like us. I think the thing here we have to see is like, okay, we give the devices, but will people use it? And things like that. But we're very excited because it feels like it's a new market for us. It makes a lot of sense, I think, for both the companies and for ourselves. So, like I said, what wasn't my dream as a kid to offer insurance. Never imagined I'd get into the insurance industry, but I'm very excited to be testing it out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it seems like such a smart pairing. I mean, when I saw like the announcement, I forget whether I got the press release or saw it on LinkedIn or something, but I remember seeing it and I remember thinking like, oh, that makes sense. Like, and I want to say too, when I had the previous episode and talked to the, a former employee about KINETIC, I want to say that I asked a question like, are people using the KINETIC to help reduce their insurance charges and stuff like that? I want to say, so I don't know if I planted the seed there, but so I mean, it's a great idea. I mean, I think it makes total sense. And I mean, what would you say, if people are listening and, this is kind of sparking their interest a little bit, what is, I mean, besides the device, I mean, is there any other different aspects of the insurance that you're offering versus, what the typical package might be?
Yeah. So really the way it works is a couple of things, right? One is we offer we said like, look, buy your insurance from us. We offer you the product. We sort of talked about that. Then what we do is we look at usage. So if they use it over time, we give them like, it's called a dividend, which is essentially like a rebate. Okay. So like, hey, if you use it, we give you back premium. Like we reduce the price of your policy because you've been using this technology. And we know that if you use it, it's going to reduce your claims, right? Yeah. And then I think the big third benefit is whenever your claims go down, the cost of your insurance the next year goes down as well, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of like good benefits which lend themselves well for continued use over time, right? It's like, hey, first year it was great. We wore it. We got a discount. Next year policy is cheaper. Yeah. Then the second year you wear it, you get another discount. Your next policy is cheaper. So it provides like a good value over time, which is great. Yeah. And I think the other thing is, in insurance, there's this process called underwriting, which was pretty new to me. But really what it is, it's you look at a customer who wants insurance and you really try to understand how risky is this customer? Is it a good risk? Do we want to insure it? Is it a risk? Is it too risky for us? So we don't want to insure it. And then what is the right price based on the risk profile, right? And that process right now is a bit of a science. It's a bit of an art. It's a bit of an old school way of doing things. Like it's been done the same way for decades. So we feel that there's like a lot of opportunity with the data that we're collecting from the device to really improve that process. And so, we could see like, hey, this client is like their risk is going down dramatically. Like the number of high risk movements is going down. So we could offer a way cheaper policy to someone like that because we know they're going to have low claims, right? Yeah. So I think there's a lot of interesting things that we can do now that we have sort of the data that we're collecting from the devices to really inform how much of a benefit we want to pass on to the client, right? So if they're very safe and they're doing a great job, then they'll get a really good policy, policy price over time. So that's why we're excited. It feels like one of those industries where like bringing tech and bringing new data is going to improve it a lot and improve it ultimately for the policyholders and the companies that are getting the insurance. So it's exciting to be part of that, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think the approach is, it's very smart. And, obviously, companies love to save money. So, I mean, that's a selling point right there. Absolutely. But I think, utilizing the actual data in such a smart way like that, I mean, it's a win-win for both sides. I mean, like you said, for the insurance company, if there's less claims, obviously it's more profitable for you guys. So, it makes sense that you're helping them to not only save, lost time, lost money on their side, but also for you it's beneficial too. So it's like a win-win deal. I mean, it's really, really smart business progression there, I think, and a smart approach to kind of the next phase of KINETIC. So we talk about the next phase of KINETIC. So you said we just launched, like 3 weeks ago with the insurance, but aside from the insurance and the device, I mean, what's next up for KINETIC? I mean, is there improvements to the device? Anything else coming up on the technology front?
Yeah, so the similarity or the comparison I like to do is like I'm wearing an Apple Watch right now, and I don't know if you remember the first version, like just about measured steps, and then as you got more and more software updates and more versions, it like measures sleep, and then it's like not only like running, it's like and cycling and walking, and then it can detect a whole bunch of different things. So really, I like to liken our wearable to that in a sense that like we're at the phase of just detecting steps. We're really early. We're detecting high risk movements. Yeah. But, we could be detecting jumping of trucks. We could be detecting, hey, you're about to get hit by a forklift. We could be detecting slips and falls. You're on a roof. When should you be this high up, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of different activities that you do on the job that are risky, right? And so like us collecting that data, making the worker aware that they're in a risky situation, that's how I sort of see the progression of the device, right? So it can measure more and more useful things that can help reduce injuries. And so that's sort of what I see the progression. And I think that's useful for both our regular business, which is sell to these large companies, but also to the insurance business, because they're going to benefit from it as well.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting stuff. And I think the device is incredibly smart. And now the step to insurance, I mean, makes total sense. So it'll be very interesting to see how it continues to evolve and what's up next. And of course, we want to talk about it here on the podcast in the future too. So Haytham, I want to thank you for coming on the show and telling us all about this and kind of the new undertaking here, or new underwriting, I guess is the insurance term, right? If that makes sense. But how can people find out more information about both the KINETIC wearable and also the insurance? What's the easiest way to do that?
Yeah, so the easiest way is go to our website. So our website is wearkinetic.com. So WEAR kinetic.com. If you're more interested on the insurance side, we have a website for KINETIC Insurance. It's kinetic-insurance.com. So they can go over there and check it out.
Okay, awesome. And we'll put all the information at thenewwarehouse.com as well, so people can find it easily. So Haytham, thank you very much for coming on the show and talking to us all about KINETIC.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.